The conference room floated in space, a massive structure of glass and metal that orbited a small green planet. Inside, representatives from 47 different species sat in their specially designed chairs. Some breathed oxygen, others methane. Some had scales, others had fur or crystal skin. They were all part of the Galactic Concordance, the alliance that kept peace among the stars. Ambassador Maria Chen stood at the front of the room. She was human, and she looked small compared to many of the aliens around her. Her dark hair was pulled back and she wore a simple blue uniform. She had been Earth's ambassador for 3 years now, and she had learned to read the body language of dozens of alien species. Today, that skill told her the room was filled with doubt. High Arbitrator Zeltik rose from his seat. He was Vexri, an insectoid creature that stood on 4 legs. His body was covered in a hard green shell, and his compound eyes reflected the light in rainbow colors. When he spoke, his mandibles clicked together between words. "Ambassador Chen," he said, his voice translated through the universal device in the room. "Humanity has requested full military alliance status within the Concordance. This is a significant step." "We understand that, High Arbitrator," Maria replied calmly. "Your species achieved faster-than-light travel only 200 years ago." Zeltik continued. "You are newcomers to the galactic community. Most species here have been traveling the stars for thousands of years." A ripple of agreement moved through the room. Maria could see it in the way the Krevnoth delegates shifted their tentacles, in how the Centauri crystalline bodies pulsed with light. Commander Thal, a Krevnoth military analyst, spoke next. His species lived in water, and he sat in a tank filled with blue liquid. His voice came through as deep and rumbling. "Ambassador, no offense is intended, but humans are physically unremarkable. You are not particularly strong, not particularly fast. Your lifespans are short. What military advantage could you possibly offer the Concordance?" Maria had expected this question. She had prepared for it. But she also knew that her answer would not be believed until they saw the evidence. "Commander Thal, I understand your skepticism," she said. "Humans may seem unremarkable by galactic standards, but our military history is unique." Dr. Yixla, a Centauri anthropologist whose body looked like living glass, chimed in with a sound like bells. "We have reviewed your basic history, Ambassador. We know humans have engaged in warfare. All species have conflicts. This is not unusual. With respect, Dr. Yixla, human warfare is very different from what you understand," Maria said carefully. "That is why we have prepared a comprehensive presentation of human military history. It is required for the Alliance evaluation, as per Concordance protocol." Zeltik's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of impatience. Yes. We must review your military capabilities and history. This is standard procedure. We have scheduled 12 hours for this evaluation. Surely that is more than sufficient for a species so young." Maria hesitated. She had argued with her superiors about this presentation. She had suggested they show only selected footage or at least break it into smaller sessions. But the Concordance rules were clear. A complete military history must be presented. "High Arbitrator, I would like to suggest we break the viewing into multiple sessions over several days. The material can be intense." A sound like laughter came from the Pilari section. The Pilari were small, furry creatures with large eyes. They were empathic, able to feel the emotions of others. One of them spoke in a high, chirping voice. "Intense? Ambassador, we have reviewed military histories from 46 species. We have seen conflicts that span centuries, battles in the depths of gas giants, wars fought with weapons that reshape planets. What could possibly be more intense than what we have already witnessed?" Maria looked at the Pilari delegate and felt a moment of genuine sympathy. The Pilari had no idea what they were about to experience. "Very well," she said quietly. "Let the record show that I advised caution. General Okonkwo, please begin the presentation." The lights in the room dimmed. A massive holographic screen appeared in the center of the chamber, visible from all angles. General Sarah Okonkwo, a tall woman with close-cropped gray hair, stepped forward. She had spent 40 years in the human military before becoming a historian. "Representatives of the Concordance," she began, "you are about to witness a comprehensive history of human warfare. From our earliest recorded conflicts to the present day, the presentation is organized chronologically and includes tactical analysis, casualty statistics, and strategic documentation. "We have studied your preliminary reports, General," Zeltik said. "Please proceed." The screen flickered to life. It showed ancient Earth, green and blue and beautiful. Then it zoomed in on a section of land, showing thousands of humans in armor, carrying shields and swords. This is the Roman Empire. Approximately 2,000 years before humans achieved spaceflight, General Okonkwo narrated. The Romans conquered millions of square kilometers through disciplined infantry warfare. The footage showed Roman legions marching in formation, then clashing with enemy forces. The aliens watched with polite interest. This was primitive warfare, nothing they hadn't seen before in other species' histories. But as the presentation continued, the interest began to turn into something else. The screen showed the Mongol invasions, horsemen sweeping across continents. It showed medieval sieges where armies surrounded cities for months, starving the population inside. It showed battles where tens of thousands died in a single day. Commander Thal shifted in his tank. These casualty rates seem high for territorial disputes. Humans historically fought wars of complete conquest, General Okonkwo explained. The goal was often total victory, not limited objectives. Dr. Yixla's crystalline body flickered with confused colors. But surely civilian populations were spared. Most civilized species have rules about. The screen showed the siege of Baghdad in 1258. The Mongols had killed hundreds of thousands of people when the city fell. A shocked silence filled the room. "Please understand," Maria interjected. "This was over 1,000 years ago. Humanity has evolved since then. We have developed rules of warfare, international laws, codes of conduct." "Continue the presentation," Zeltik ordered, his voice tight. The footage moved forward through time. It showed the Napoleonic Wars where entire nations mobilized for conflict. Battles like Waterloo appeared on the screen, where 50,000 soldiers became casualties in a single day. Then came the World Wars. When the first footage of World War I appeared, showing millions of men living in trenches, charging across fields into machine gun fire, several aliens stood up from their seats. "This cannot be accurate," one of the Polari delegates said, their voice shaking. "These casualty numbers, 40 million? For what purpose? Territorial disputes, alliance obligations, and political ideologies," General Okonkwo said quietly. The footage showed poison gas rolling across battlefields, soldiers drowning in mud, artillery bombardments that lasted for days. It showed young men going over the top into certain death wave after wave. 3 Polari delegates stood up and walked out of the chamber. Their empathic abilities could not handle the emotional weight of what they were witnessing. The presentation continued to World War II. Blitzkrieg warfare, the siege of Stalingrad, the firebombing of cities, the island-hopping campaigns in the Pacific where soldiers fought over tiny pieces of land with fanatical determination. And then came the atomic bombs. The screen showed Hiroshima. A single flash of light, a mushroom cloud rising into the sky, the ruins of a city. The numbers over 100,000 dead in seconds, then Nagasaki. Another flash. Another city destroyed. The room was completely silent. Even the translation devices seemed to struggle with the lack of words. "You split the atom," Zeltik finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "You weaponized the power of stars. And you used it on yourselves." Before anyone could respond, 15 species representatives stood up. They moved toward the exits in silence. 8 of them formally announced they were objecting to human membership in the Concordance. Maria Chen stood at the front of the room and watched them go. She had known this would happen. She had warned them. The presentation was less than 1/3 complete. "Should we continue?" General Okonkwo asked quietly. Maria looked at the remaining representatives. 23 species had stayed. Some looked horrified. Others looked curious in the way one might be curious about a dangerous predator behind glass. "We continue," Zeltik said. "We must see all of it." Maria nodded slowly. The worst was yet to come. After a brief recess, the remaining delegates returned to their seats. The room felt emptier now with only 23 species represented. The aliens who stayed looked at each other nervously. Some had called their homeworlds for guidance. Others simply felt obligated to complete the evaluation, no matter how disturbing it became. Maria. Chen noticed that several delegates had moved their seats farther from the human section of the room. "We will now continue with human warfare from 1950 to 2100. General Okonkwo announced. The screen came back to life. The footage showed what humans called the Cold War, two massive nations armed with thousands of nuclear weapons facing each other across the globe. The aliens watched as the presentation explained the concept of mutually assured destruction. Ambassador Krieth of the Harmonious Collective spoke up. The collective was a hive mind species, thousands of individuals sharing one consciousness. When Krieth spoke, it was with the voice of millions. We do not understand. You built enough weapons to destroy your own planet 50 times over? Why would any rational species do this? Deterrence, Maria explained. The theory was that if both sides could destroy each other completely, neither side would start a war. Did it work? Dr. Yixla asked. Yes and no, General Okonkwo said. The major powers never fought directly, but they fought through proxies in smaller nations around the world. The screen showed conflicts in Korea, Vietnam, Afghanistan, and dozens of other places. The aliens watched human soldiers fighting in jungles, deserts, mountains, and cities. They saw guerrilla warfare, where fighters blended into civilian populations. They saw booby traps, ambushes, and tactics that most military species considered dishonorable. Commander Thal made a sound of disgust in his tank. These tactics are chaotic. There is no formation, no clear front line. How can this be effective? Humans adapt, General Okonkwo said simply. When conventional warfare fails, we find new methods. When the enemy is stronger, we become unpredictable. When we cannot win through force, we win through patience. The screen showed the Vietnam War in detail. It showed a technologically advanced military fighting against an enemy that refused to surrender despite overwhelming casualties. The war lasted 20 years. Over 3 million people died. They just kept fighting, Zeltic observed, his mandibles still, even when victory was impossible. Humans have a saying, Maria said quietly. It is better to die on your feet than live on your knees. Several aliens made sounds that the translators interpreted as disbelief or fear. The presentation moved forward. It showed the Gulf War of the early 1990s, where human military technology demonstrated its precision. Missiles that could fly through windows, aircraft that were invisible to radar, night vision that turned darkness into day. This is impressive technology, Commander Thal admitted, but many species have precision weapons. Yes, General Okonkwo agreed. But watch how humans combine them. The footage showed what the military called combined arms doctrine. Aircraft, artillery, tanks, and infantry all working together in perfect coordination. The aliens watched as human forces destroyed a large army in a matter of weeks, using speed and information warfare. You fight with data as much as with weapons, Dr. Yixla observed, her crystalline body pulsing with thoughtful colors. Information is a weapon, General Okonkwo confirmed. Knowing where your enemy is, what they are doing, what they will do next. This is as important as having guns. The presentation continued through the early 21st century. Conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan that lasted 20 years. The aliens were stunned by this. You maintained active warfare for 2 decades? Krieth asked. How? Most species cannot sustain military operations for more than a few years before their economies collapse or their populations demand peace. Humans compartmentalize, Maria explained. Less than 1% of our population served in the military during these conflicts. The rest of society continued normally. People went to work, raised families, built businesses. The wars happened far away, carried out by volunteers. Volunteers? Several aliens spoke at once. Your soldiers choose to fight? Yes, Maria said. We have professional militaries. People volunteer to serve. But why? A delegate asked. Why would anyone choose to go to war? Maria thought about how to explain it. Duty, honor, the desire to protect their families and nations. Sometimes adventure. Sometimes they have no other economic options. The reasons are complex. The screen changed to show more recent history, the terraform wars on Mars in the 2090s. Humans fighting each other in domed cities and underground tunnels. Combat in low gravity, in thin atmospheres in conditions that would kill most species instantly. Then came footage from the asteroid belt insurrection. Humans fighting in zero gravity, in the vacuum of space itself. The aliens watched as armored soldiers used small thrusters to move between asteroids, fighting battles in 3 dimensions with no up or down. They adapted warfare to space in less than 200 years, Commander Thal said, and there was something like respect in his voice now. My people took 1,000 years to develop effective zero-gravity combat doctrine. Humans learn quickly, General Okonkwo said, especially when survival depends on it. The presentation showed more advanced human weapons, railguns that fired projectiles at a fraction of light speed, lasers that could burn through ship armor, kinetic weapons that dropped tungsten rods from orbit, hitting targets with the force of nuclear bombs but without the radiation. You weaponized orbital mechanics, Zeltik said flatly. We weaponized everything, Maria admitted. Physics, chemistry, biology, information, psychology. If something can be used in warfare, humans have found a way to use it. The screen showed a graph. It displayed human military spending over the past 300 years. The numbers were staggering. Humanity spent more on military research and development than most concordant species' entire planetary economies. Dr. Yixla's body flickered with alarmed colors. This is not sustainable. How can you dedicate such resources to warfare? Because we must, General Okonkwo said. Human history has taught us that peace is temporary. There is always another threat, another conflict. We prepare constantly. But you are part of the Concordance now, Krieth said. You are safe. The Concordance has maintained peace for over 2,000 years. Maria and General Okonkwo exchanged glances. Maria spoke carefully. The Concordance has maintained peace because no one has seriously challenged it. But the galaxy is large. There are things beyond concordant space. We want to be ready if something comes. What things? Zeltik demanded. What do you know that we do not? Nothing specific, Maria assured him. But humans have a saying. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. The screen changed again. It showed a series of documents marked with high security classifications. These were human military contingency plans. What are these? Commander Thal asked. General Okonkwo took a deep breath. These are theoretical combat scenarios. War games. Simulations that we run to keep our military planners sharp. Simulations of what? Dr. Yixla asked, though her tone suggested she already suspected the answer. Simulations of how humans would fight against various threats, General Okonkwo said, including threats from species within the Concordance. The room erupted. Delegates jumped to their feet, their voices overlapping in a dozen languages that the translators struggled to separate. You have been planning how to fight us? Zeltik's voice cut through the chaos. Since when? Since we joined the Concordance, Maria said honestly. We have contingency plans for conflict with every species in this room. Not because we want to fight you, but because we always prepare for every possibility. This is outrageous, a delegate shouted. This is paranoid, another added. This is practical, Commander Thal said quietly. His words surprised everyone into silence. My people do the same thing. We have theoretical plans for conflicts with our neighbors. It is basic military prudence, but we do not usually admit it so openly. Humans value honesty, Maria said. We are telling you this because we want you to understand us. We are not your enemies, but we are always prepared, even for outcomes we hope never happen. 4 more species delegates stood up. They gathered their materials and walked toward the exits. As they passed the human section, one of them spoke. You are dangerous. Too dangerous to trust. When they were gone, only 18 species remained. Zeltik looked tired. Is there more? Yes, General Okonkwo said. The final section covers human strategic military capabilities and our prepared response to existential threats. Existential threats? Zeltik asked. Threats to humanity's survival, Maria clarified. Threats that would require total mobilization of our entire species. This section includes simulations of how humanity would respond to invasion by a superior force. The remaining delegates looked at each other. Several seemed to be considering leaving, but curiosity or duty kept them in their seats. Show us, Zeltik said. We have come this far. The screen flickered to life once more, and the true horror had only just begun. The screen displayed a title, Human Total War Doctrine, Existential Threat Response Protocols. General Okonkwo stood silent for a moment before beginning. What you are about to see are simulations. These events have not happened, but they represent how humanity would respond if our species faced extinction. The simulation began with a scenario. An unknown alien force vastly superior in technology invades human space. The invaders destroy Earth's defensive fleets within hours. They demand complete surrender. The aliens in the room watched as the simulation showed humanity's response. There was no surrender. Instead, the screen showed Earth's entire economy transforming overnight. Every factory, every shipyard, every manufacturing facility converted to military production. Civilian spacecraft became military transports. Passenger ships became troop carriers. Mining operations shifted to producing weapons materials. "This is your total mobilization?" Krieth asked. "You would convert your entire civilization to warfare?" "Yes," Maria said simply. "When survival is at stake, everything else becomes secondary." The simulation continued. It showed humans evacuating Earth, sending billions of civilians to colonies on Mars, Europa, Titan, and hundreds of other settlements across the solar system. But millions stayed behind, volunteering to fight. Earth became a fortress. The screen showed the invading alien fleet approaching. They expected a quick victory. Instead, they found every approach to Earth covered with mines, automated weapons platforms, and suicide drones. The humans had turned their home system into a death trap. The aliens in the conference room watched in silence as the simulation showed the battle. Human ships, often inferior in technology, used kamikaze tactics. They rammed enemy vessels, detonated nuclear weapons at close range, and used their own ships as missiles. "They are sacrificing themselves," Dr. Yixla said, her crystalline body pulsing with distressed colors. "Deliberately." "Yes," General Okonkwo confirmed. "In human military history, sacrificial rearguard actions are common. Some soldiers stay behind to buy time for others to escape, knowing they will not survive." The simulation showed Earth itself under siege. The invaders began orbital bombardment. The humans fought from underground bunkers, emerging to strike at landing forces before disappearing again. "Guerrilla warfare on a planetary scale," Commander Thial observed. "They would make the enemy pay for every meter of ground." "Exactly," General Okonkwo said. "Even if Earth fell, humans would continue fighting from the colonies. And if those fell, we would retreat further into space. We would fight from asteroid bases, from hidden stations in the outer solar system, from nomadic fleet carriers." The simulation showed this exodus, millions of humans fleeing in whatever ships they could find, but always maintaining a military force, always attacking the enemy wherever possible. "This simulation runs for 50 years, General Okonkwo said. "After 50 years of constant warfare, with humanity losing every major battle, the human population has been reduced by 97%. 97% casualties," Zeltik repeated. "And your species still fights? Until the last human draws their last breath," Maria said quietly. "That is what survival means to us." The simulation ended with a projection. The enemy force, despite superior technology, had suffered 40% casualties. Their supply lines were stretched across light years, constantly harassed by human raiders. Their forces were exhausted, traumatized by facing an enemy that never surrendered. "The simulation concludes that the enemy would likely withdraw," General Okonkwo said, "not because they cannot win, but because the cost of victory becomes too high. They would realize that destroying humanity would require them to hunt down every single human, across thousands of light years, while suffering continuous losses. Eventually it becomes easier to leave us alone." Commander Thal made a sound like grinding metal in his tank. "This is madness. Surely no species would actually do this. This is just theoretical posturing, is it?" Maria asked. She gestured to the screen. "General, please show them the historical examples." The screen changed to show historical data. It showed the Soviet Union during World War II, losing 27 million people but never surrendering. It showed the Chinese fighting Japan, enduring horrific casualties for 8 years. It showed smaller nations throughout history, fighting hopeless wars against superior enemies simply because surrender was unacceptable. "These are not simulations," General Okonkwo said. "These are historical facts. When pushed to the brink, humans fight with a desperation that other species cannot comprehend." "But why?" Dr. Yixla asked. Her voice sounded genuinely confused. "Why not surrender and survive? Why choose extinction over submission?" Maria thought carefully about her answer. "Because to humans, freedom is worth more than life. We would rather die free than live as slaves. This idea is built into our cultures, our philosophies, our very identity as a species. It is not logical," Krieth said. "The logical choice is always survival." Humans are not always logical, Maria admitted. We are emotional creatures, and our emotions drive us to do things that might seem irrational, like fighting impossible odds, like sacrificing ourselves for abstract concepts like freedom, honor, or justice. The screen changed again. It showed detailed tactical analysis of how humans would fight against each species in the concordance. The aliens watched as the presentation showed doctrine for combat against the Krevnoth in high-gravity environments, against the Vexri in their hive structures, against energy-based beings like the Luminar. You have planned how to kill all of us, one delegate said flatly. We have planned how to defend ourselves against all of you, Maria corrected. There is a difference. These plans are defensive in nature. They assume others attack us first. But you have them ready, Zeltik said. You have studied our weaknesses, our vulnerabilities. You know how to hurt us. Yes, General Okonkwo said. Just as we assume you have studied ours. An uncomfortable silence filled the room. Several delegates shifted in their seats. They had, in fact, done exactly that. It was standard military intelligence gathering. But humans were admitting it openly, showing their work, revealing just how thoroughly they had prepared. Commander Thal spoke up. These plans are impressive. Disturbing, but impressive. However, they are based on fighting individual species. What if you face the entire concordance? All 47 species working together? Maria and General Okonkwo looked at each other. Maria nodded slightly. Show them Protocol Omega, she said quietly. Protocol Omega, Zeltik asked. What is that? It is our response to a complete concordance war against humanity, General Okonkwo said. It is, we hope, entirely theoretical. The screen displayed a scenario that made several aliens gasp. It showed humanity facing the combined military might of the entire galactic concordance. The odds were overwhelming. Thousands of alien worlds against humanity's few dozen colonies. The human response was chilling. Protocol Omega involved the complete militarization of human space. Every human civilian would become a soldier. Every ship would become a weapon. Humanity would abandon its colonies and consolidate into mobile fleet cities, constantly moving through space. But the most disturbing part was the scorched earth policy. As humans retreated from their colonies, they would destroy everything. Planets would be stripped of resources and left barren. Space stations would be detonated. Entire solar systems would be seeded with self-replicating mines that would make them uninhabitable for centuries. You would destroy your own colonies? Dr. Yixla asked in horror. If we cannot hold them, the enemy cannot use them, General Okonkwo said. We deny the enemy every possible advantage. The simulation showed human fleet cities conducting hit-and-run attacks across concordant space. They would strike civilian infrastructure, mining operations, trade routes. They would use fear and economic damage as weapons. Terrorism, one delegate spat. You would become terrorists. We would become desperate, Maria corrected. And desperate humans are the most dangerous kind. The simulation's conclusion was sobering. After a century of warfare, the concordance would likely achieve military victory. Humanity would be reduced to a tiny remnant, perhaps a few million survivors hiding in the dark spaces between stars. But the cost to the concordance would be catastrophic. The simulation projected economic collapse, millions of casualties and psychological trauma across the entire alliance. The concordance would win, but it would be broken by the victory. You would drag everyone down with you, Zeltik said quietly. If we must die, we die hard, General Okonkwo said. We make certain that defeating us costs more than leaving us alone. 3 more delegates stood and left. They said nothing, but their body language communicated fear and disgust. 15 species remained. Zeltik looked at the humans for a long moment. His compound eyes reflected the light in shifting patterns. I think we need a recess. A long one. We must discuss what we have seen. Maria nodded. Of course, High Arbitrator. Take all the time you need. As the aliens filed out of the conference room, Maria and General Okonkwo stood alone. The general looked tired. Did we go too far? She asked. Were we too honest? Maria shook her head. They needed to see the truth, all of it. Better they fear us now and make an informed decision than underestimate us later and cause a tragedy. The recess lasted 6 hours. During that time, the remaining alien delegates contacted their governments, consulted with military advisors, and argued among themselves. Some wanted to reject humanity immediately. Others saw potential benefit in having such fierce warriors as allies rather than enemies. When they finally returned to the conference room, the atmosphere was different. The casual dismissal was gone. Now the aliens looked at the humans the way one might look at a caged predator, with caution. With respect born from fear, Celtic was the first to speak. Ambassador Chen, General Okonkwo. We have questions. Many questions. But first we need to understand something fundamental. He paused, his mandibles clicking nervously. Why are your people like this? What made humans this way? Maria had expected this question. She gestured for General Okonkwo to sit, and she stood alone at the front of the room. To understand humans, you need to understand our world, she began. Earth is what we call a death world. Death world? Dr. Yixla's crystalline body pulsed with curiosity. A planet with extreme biodiversity and competition, Maria explained. Most of your species evolved on relatively peaceful worlds. You had few predators, abundant resources, stable climates. Earth was not like that. She gestured to the screen, which now showed images of Earth. Beautiful oceans, vast forests, towering mountains, but also hurricanes, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and deadly creatures. Humans evolved as prey animals first. Maria continued. We were hunted by creatures larger, faster, and stronger than us. Big cats, bears, wolves. We survived not through strength but through intelligence and endurance. Endurance? Commander Theal asked. Humans are persistence hunters, General Okonkwo explained, standing to join Maria. Our ancestors would chase prey for hours, sometimes days. We cannot outrun a deer in a sprint, but we can follow it until it collapses from exhaustion. We can keep going when other creatures must stop. The screen showed footage of human persistence hunting, ancient techniques still practiced by some tribes. The aliens watched as humans ran after animals for hours under the hot sun, never stopping, never giving up. This is your evolutionary foundation, Maria said. We are not built for quick victories. We are built for long struggles. We win by outlasting our opponents. But this does not explain your violence toward each other, Krieth said. You do not just fight external threats. You fight yourselves constantly. Maria nodded grimly. Yes, because Earth was so competitive, humans developed strong tribal instincts. We bonded tightly with our groups, our families, our nations, but we saw other human groups as competitors for resources. Most species grow past this phase, Dr. Yixla said. We develop global consciousness, unified purpose. Humans have tried, Maria admitted. We have international laws, global organizations, shared goals, but our tribal instincts remain strong. We identify ourselves by nation, religion, ideology, even by sports teams. We create groups and then we compete with other groups. This seems like a weakness, Celtic observed. It is, General Okonkwo agreed, but it is also a strength. These tribal instincts create fierce loyalty. Humans will die for their group, their nation, their comrades. This makes us exceptional soldiers. The screen showed examples. Soldiers throwing themselves on grenades to save their friends. Medics running into fire to rescue wounded comrades. Pilots crashing their damaged aircraft away from populated areas. Dying to save strangers. You sacrifice for each other, Commander Thal said. And there was wonder in his voice. Even for humans you do not know personally. We call it duty, Maria said. Or honor. Or love of country. The specific word changes, but the concept is the same. Humans will sacrifice themselves for abstract ideas and for people they have never met. This is illogical, Krieth stated. From a survival perspective, individual survival should be paramount. That is where you misunderstand, General Okonkwo said. Humans are social creatures. We do not see ourselves as pure individuals. We see ourselves as part of something larger. A family, a community, a nation, a species. Individual survival is less important than group survival. Dr. Yixla's body flickered with different colors as she processed this. So when you face extinction as a species, you mobilize completely, because the species is more important than individual lives. Exactly, Maria confirmed. A human might fear death personally, but they fear the death of humanity more. So they fight, even when fighting seems hopeless. A small delegate from the Nixtar species spoke up. The Nixtar were cautious, peaceful beings who had not spoken much during the presentation. But surely not all humans feel this way. You must have cowards, those who refuse to fight? Of course we do, Maria admitted. Humans are diverse. Some are brave, some are cowardly. Some seek violence, others are pacifists. But our cultures glorify warriors and heroes. We tell stories about them. build monuments to them, teach our children to admire them. This creates social pressure to be brave, to fight for the group. You manipulate your own psychology, Commander Thal said. It was not quite a question. All cultures do, General Okonkwo replied. But human cultures particularly emphasize martial virtues: courage, strength, sacrifice. Even our sports are often simulations of warfare. We train our young to be competitive and aggressive from an early age. The screen showed human children playing games. Football where they tackled each other. Martial arts training. Even video games where they simulated combat. You raise your children to be warriors, Zeltik said slowly. Not all children, Maria corrected, but we raise them to understand that sometimes violence is necessary, that there are things worth fighting for, that peace must sometimes be defended with force. This is so different from our ways, Dr. Yixla said. My people teach our young that violence is always the last option, to be avoided whenever possible. We teach that too, Maria said. But we also teach that when violence becomes necessary, you must be good at it. Better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war, as one of our sayings goes. Krieth spoke again, their collective voice thoughtful. There is something else we noticed in your military footage. Humans form bonds with their weapons, their vehicles, their ships. You name them. You treat them almost as if they were alive. This is unusual, Maria smiled slightly. You noticed that? Yes, humans bond with things. We name our ships, our tanks, our aircraft. Soldiers become attached to their weapons. This seems strange to you? Very strange, Dr. Yixla confirmed. Objects are objects. They are tools. They do not have personalities or emotions. To humans, anything can have personality, General Okonkwo explained. We project emotions and identity onto objects, especially objects that keep us alive. A soldier's rifle is not just a tool. It is the thing that protects them. So they care for it, name it, form a bond with it. Humans are intensely social creatures. We bond with everything. Other humans, animals, even inanimate objects. Some humans have emotional connections to their vehicles, their homes, their possessions. This sounds like a psychological condition, Commander Thal said, but not unkindly. Perhaps it is, Maria admitted, but it works for us. These bonds make us care. They give us motivation. A soldier who loves their ship will fight harder to protect it. A pilot who has named their aircraft will push it to its limits and beyond. The conversation continued for hours. The aliens asked about human psychology, human culture, human motivations. They tried to understand what made humans so willing to fight, to die, to never surrender. Finally, Zeltik asked the question that seemed to be on everyone's mind. Ambassador Chen, are humans capable of peace? Or are you simply warriors who exist between wars? Maria took a deep breath. This was the most important question, and she needed to answer it carefully. Humans want peace, she said firmly. Most humans, most of the time, want to live quiet lives, raise families, build things, create art, explore the universe. We are not mindless war machines. But, she continued, humans know that peace is not guaranteed. We have learned, through thousands of years of hard experience, that peace must be protected, that there are always those who would take it from us. So we prepare for war even while we hope for peace. We are not warriors who exist between wars, General Okonkwo added. We are farmers and artists and scientists and teachers who become warriors when we must. And when we must fight, we fight with everything we have. Because you cannot afford to lose, Dr. Yixla said quietly. Because we will not accept losing, Maria corrected gently. There is a difference. It is not about ability. It is about will. Humans have an iron will to survive, to endure, to prevail against any odds. Commander Thal was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice carrying a weight of decision. I have reached a conclusion. Humans are terrifying. Your capacity for violence, your willingness to sacrifice, your refusal to surrender. All of this should make you unsuitable for the Concordance. Maria's heart sank. But Thal continued. However, I find myself asking a different question. If humans are this dangerous as potential enemies, how much more dangerous would it be to not have them as allies? If a true threat came to the Concordance, would we not want humans standing with us rather than against us? Several other delegates nodded slowly. Zeltik's mandibles clicked in what Maria had learned to recognize as agreement. General Okonkwo nodded and activated a new simulation. The screen showed a scenario that made the previous ones look tame. An extragalactic threat. A species the simulation simply called the Devourers. They were consuming entire star systems, moving through space like a plague of locusts. The simulation showed the Concordance response. Fleets mobilizing, defensive lines forming. The aliens watched their own species fighting bravely, using their superior technology and coordination, but the Devourers kept coming. They had numbers beyond counting, and they seemed to care nothing for casualties. They simply overwhelmed every defensive position through sheer mass. This is similar to your human wave tactics, Commander Thal observed, but on a galactic scale. Yes, General Okonkwo confirmed. Now watch what happens when humans join the defense. The simulation showed human fleets arriving. They were smaller than the Concordance fleets, less numerous, but they deployed differently. While Concordance forces fought in organized defensive formations, human ships operated in aggressive strike groups. Human vessels pushed deep into enemy formations, targeting command ships and supply lines. They used kamikaze drones, nuclear mines, and suicidal ramming attacks. They took horrific casualties, but they created chaos in the enemy ranks. Humans would be the spear point, Maria explained. The aggressive element. While Concordance forces hold defensive positions, human forces strike at enemy weak points, disrupt their formations, force them to respond to threats from multiple directions. The simulation showed this strategy working. The Devourers, accustomed to overwhelming static defenses, found themselves dealing with an enemy that refused to stay still. Human fleets appeared where they were not expected, struck hard and vanished before the enemy could respond. Guerrilla warfare on an interstellar scale, Dr. Yixla observed. You would be the raiders while we maintain the front lines. Exactly, General Okonkwo said. Humans excel at aggressive, high-risk operations. Concordance forces excel at coordination, logistics, and sustained defense. Together we complement each other's strengths. The simulation continued. It showed Concordant species providing intelligence, resources, and strategic planning. The Krevnoth used their expertise in defensive engineering to build fortress worlds. The Centauri used their advanced sensors to track enemy movements. The Vexri coordinated logistics across dozens of star systems. And humans? Humans fought with a ferocity that even the Devourers could not match. The simulation showed a critical battle. A Concordance colony world under siege. Civilian evacuations in progress. The defensive fleet was outnumbered 10-1. Defeat seemed certain. Then human reinforcements arrived. 50 ships against thousands. The odds were impossible. The humans attacked anyway. They formed a wedge formation and drove straight into the heart of the enemy fleet. They fired every weapon, launched every missile, deployed every mine. When their weapons ran dry, they used their ships as battering rams. 47 of the 50 human ships were destroyed. But they bought enough time for the civilian evacuation to complete, and for Concordance reinforcements to arrive. 3 ships survived, Zeltic said quietly, out of 50. A 94% casualty rate. And you call this a victory? The colony was saved, Maria said simply. Over 2 billion civilians evacuated safely. Yes, we would call that a victory. The simulation showed the war's conclusion. After 20 years of bitter fighting, the Devourers were pushed back. Not destroyed, but driven to the edges of known space. The cost had been terrible. Millions of casualties, hundreds of worlds damaged or destroyed. But the Concordance survived. And according to the simulation, they would not have survived without human involvement. Your sacrificial tactics saved countless lives, Commander Thal said. You took the casualties that would have been spread across the entire Concordance and concentrated them on yourselves. That is what humans do, General Okonkwo said. We stand between the innocent and danger. We pay the blood price so others do not have to. The room was silent for a long moment. The aliens looked at each other, communicating in ways that were subtle and complex. Finally, Zeltic spoke. We will now vote on humanity's application for military alliance status. Given what we have witnessed, I propose we consider a modified status. Not full integration, not yet, but a special partnership. Humans would serve as rapid response forces handling high-risk operations that other species are ill-suited for. A military elite, Dr. Yixla said slowly. You propose making humans into our special operations forces? I propose recognizing what humans already are, Zeltic corrected. Warriors who thrive in circumstances that would break other species. Rather than fear this, we should utilize it, for the benefit of all Concordance members. What would this mean practically? Kriyith asked. Humans would maintain their own command structure and military independence, Zeltik explained. But they would coordinate with concordance forces. We would provide intelligence, logistics, and resources. Humans would provide rapid response capabilities, special operations, and high-intensity combat forces. You want us to be your warriors, Maria said flatly. We want you to be yourselves, Zeltik replied, but in service of the greater good. You have proven you are not conquerors. You seek alliance, not domination. So let us form an alliance that plays to everyone's strengths. Maria looked at General Okonkwo. They had a quick, silent conversation with their eyes. This was not what they had hoped for. Full membership would have been better, but this was acceptable. More than acceptable, really. It gave humanity the benefits of concordance membership, while allowing them to maintain independence. We would need to consult with Earth, Maria said carefully, but personally I find these terms acceptable. Then let us vote, Zeltik announced. All in favor of accepting humanity as special military partners of the Concordance? One by one, the delegates registered their votes. 9 species voted yes, 3 voted no, 2 abstained. The motion passes, Zeltik declared. Humanity is hereby granted special military partner status, effective immediately. Welcome to the Concordance, Ambassador Chen. Maria felt relief wash over her. She smiled and nodded respectfully. Thank you, High Arbitrator. Humanity is honored to serve alongside you. But as the formal proceedings concluded and the delegates began to leave, Zeltik approached Maria privately. His voice was low, meant only for her. Ambassador, I must be honest with you. I am terrified of your species. Maria met his compound eyes steadily. I know, but I am more terrified of facing the galaxy without you, he continued. What we saw today, it was horrifying. Your capacity for violence, your willingness to die, your refusal to ever give up. It goes against everything most species believe about survival and rationality. But, Maria prompted. But perhaps that is exactly what the Concordance needs, Zeltik said. We have been safe for so long that we have forgotten how to truly fight. We have forgotten that sometimes peace must be defended with blood. You have not forgotten. You cannot forget. It is written into your very nature. We did not choose to be this way, Maria said quietly. We evolved on a harsh world. We survived by being stubborn and fierce. We cannot change our nature, High Arbitrator. We can only hope to channel it toward good purposes. Then channel it toward defending the Concordance, Zeltik said. We need humans, Ambassador Chen. Not in spite of what you are, but because of what you are. The galaxy is vast and dangerous. There are threats we do not yet know about, and when those threats come, I want humans standing between them and us. We will stand, Maria promised. That is what we do. We stand when others cannot. We fight when others will not. We endure when others would break. Zeltik's mandibles clicked in what might have been approval or might have been fear. Perhaps both. We watched your history today and saw monsters. I hope, when the time comes, we will watch you fight for us and see heroes instead. You will see both, Maria said honestly. Because humans are both. We are capable of terrible things and wonderful things. The difference is in who we fight for and why we fight. Zeltik nodded slowly and returned to his delegation. Maria stood alone for a moment, looking at the empty conference room. Half the Concordance delegates had walked out in terror, but the other half had stayed. They had voted to trust humanity, or at least to give humanity a chance. It was enough. For now it was enough. 5 years later the call came. An unknown force appeared at the edge of Concordance space. They attacked without warning, destroying everything in their path. They were not the devourers from the simulation, but they were just as deadly. Within hours, every species that had walked out of the presentation 5 years ago sent emergency requests for human military intervention. Admiral Chen, who had been promoted from ambassador after the alliance was formalized, stood on the bridge of the ECS Indomitable. Around her, a fleet of 300 human warships prepared for immediate jump. All ships report ready, Admiral, her tactical officer said. Maria looked at the holographic display showing the invaded systems. She thought about those aliens who had walked out in terror 5 years ago. They had been so disturbed by human warfare that they could not bear to watch. Now they were begging for that same ferocity to save them. Signal the fleet, Maria ordered. All ships jump on my mark.